2 weekends ago on the Saturday was UFC 225. It had two great main events, I should say, a co-main and main.
Solid fights.
Two title fights, right? As we obviously discussed in TwoWhiteBelts Watch, you had Covington and RDA, and then you have Romero and Whitaker. So when you're talking about the elite talent, they were fighting.
They were.
But there was only $150,000 in pay-per-view buys.
Were there?
That's it. Which, to me, I mean, I'm saying that's it, but maybe we can debate whether we think that's it or we think that's fair.
That's not a lot.
And that's what I want to discuss, and that's the headline. What do you think about the pay-per-view buys?
I think we're at a weird time in the MMA right now where, like, you really have a big divide between, like, stars and non-stars. And there really aren't that many stars.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, like, a fight that I think is probably worthy of more eyes, like Romero Whitaker. I mean, what are we talking about? Like a Colby Covington against Dos Anjos, like top fights.
Right.
People barely give a shit, and that's just kind of where we're at in the sport. I don't know. It's a weird thing. What are your thoughts?
You know what? I have to agree with you. I mean, when you're talking about the 185-pound division worldwide in MMA, those are at least two of your top three fighters there. You know, the other person I throw in is Gegard Mousasi. Shout out to Mousasi. But you're talking about the elite 185-pound talents, and people don't care.
They don't care.
So for me, I think it's a little bit disheartening, but we've already now seen that shift from sport to entertainment. So if you're into sport, if you want to see the best fight the best and the bracket system, go watch PFL, which is the Professional Fight League, which are trying to do the old Bellator model where you win and you advance. But the UFC model is not for you because as we've seen, even in the last 10 pay-per-view buys or so, they're pathetic. The last good one was Bisping versus St. Pierre.
What did that one do?
That one did about just under 900,000, so 875.
That's not amazing from where, I mean, 875 for like GSP's comeback. It still seems like maybe not enough. I don't know.
If you're not Conor McGregor, you're not selling. I think at the end of the day, that's the thing now, right? There is that disparity that we are seeing. Do you think that the UFC is doing themselves a disservice by having this model and relying too much on single fighters as opposed to building the whole roster? Or do you think, you know what, this kind of works?
Well, I think for a long time, I mean, the UFC has kind of been in the business of building the business of the UFC. As opposed to building up their fighters and really trying to make their fighters into stars. Yeah, they'll do a countdown, and yeah, they'll do whatever that cheap show is that
Embedded
they do before.
Embedded.
Okay, they'll do that as well before a fight. But in terms of really investing in building stars, I don't see enough of that. And I think that has a lot to do with why we're also not seeing the views that you might see, because there's so many other options in terms of entertainment, in terms of what you could watch. So I don't know. I think something is missing and something needs to be remedied, I guess.
I think so too. I think now there's a lot of onus on the fighter to create their own brand, create your own image. And I think fighters need to take that more seriously.
That's true too.
And really market themselves. Have your own social media profile. Do what the TwoWhiteBelts are doing. Get yourself out there, because the UFC is not going to get you out there because they have way too many people on the roster. And even we just had a video on Donald Cerrone versus Leon Rocky Edwards. Rocky's fought 9 times in the UFC. Nobody knows him. If he goes on a pay-per-view, he's selling 2,000, and that's Birmingham, England, where he's from. So
which is crazy.
Which is a little silly when you're talking about an elite top 15 athlete. So I'm like I said, disheartened that we're going down that path, but this is the inevitable path that the UFC wants to go down, where they are creating these huge stars. And if, in doing so, it's a double-edged sword that once the star gets bigger than the brand, i.e. Conor, it's hard to reel him back in and give him $1 million when he's making $100 million.
How many fights do you think Conor's going to sell next time he comes back? I mean, what are we talking about views there?
I think you're talking about 1.7, 1.8 million.
North of 2, no matter
North
what.
of 2.
North of 2, no matter what.
Yeah, maybe.
You know how much I miss Conor right now?
But then the Floyd one versus... I miss Conor a lot. I don't want to ramble on. Can we end this here?
Yeah, it's probably too long. Sorry, guys.
Oos.